Good evening. This is Maestro Patella with a Dawn of War 2 Retribution Elite Modcast. Today we have a 1v1 on Ashes of Typhon. Almost forgot the name of this map. Now our first player right here is Krakza, as this orc Mekboy, this little orc with a screw in his mouth who can teleport, he can repair, he can heal both vehicles and other orcs. His opponent is Why Are There So Many Bad Losers? This is also Stoned Elf Boy, playing as the Commissar Lord, this beastly human with a free energy shield. He has a bionic eye, he can execute his troops to fight harder, he can get a power sword and power fists. So, we got this player here, Krakza. He's a player who I'm not very familiar with, but there have been a few replays of him put up against some good players, so I'm expecting good things. He is playing here as the Orc Mekboy. The Orc Mekboy, I feel like, is not a terribly common hero, but he has some similarities to the Warp Spider Exarch. He is a teleporting hero, and that means a few things. First of all, it means you start out with better than average map control, because you have a unit that can teleport around. And this map in particular, Ashes of Typhon, has a lot of barriers that make it so that teleporting units in general are generally going to be a little bit better on this map. But the implications of that teleport, first of all, there's the better map control. It also gives you a free and easy counter to setup teams, so that makes setup teams not that great of a choice. It also means that hero to hero, the Commissar Lord will have a lot of trouble catching up to a hero like the Mekboy. The Commissar Lord himself will have a lot of trouble being much of a threat against the Mekboy, so Stoned Elf Boy will have to rely a lot more on the firepower of the Sentinel and his Guardsmen to handle the Mekboy. Now the Mekboy, he's teleporting around. One of the things that I think Krakza should try to be doing a little bit more is that when he teleports with the Mekboy, he should teleport him so that he's in cover. One of the other implications of having a teleporting unit or a teleporting hero, especially a ranged teleporting hero, is that theoretically at least they should never really be out of cover. You have a lot of control to position them exactly where you want, and unlike any other regular unit that has to walk where it needs to go, you don't need to deal with that transitional time of walking to cover. You can just teleport instantly and instantly be in cover. But the Shooter Boys right here, Krakza is prioritizing getting the Shooter Knob over getting the big shooters. That's an interesting choice. Now the Shooter Knob does not add as much DPS to the Shooter Boys as getting the big shooters, but it does make the squad quite a bit more durable. And since that Shooter Knob actually has, I think he actually has 285 health, and that's a lot considering the Shooter Boys to start out. The regular Shooter Boys only have 125, so he by himself has more than double the health. He's going to make the squad a lot more durable, not give quite as much firepower, but he does also have 100% fire on the move, which is pretty good for chasing down the Sentinels. The Mekboy does have to be careful here, but I think against just about any other race, retreating with this much health in that position would have been very, very risky. The Imperial Guard, since they're not putting out too much early melee, basically it's just this Commissar and to some extent Catachan Devils. They just aren't going to be good as killing on retreat as most other races. One of the things that I like what Krakza is doing is that he's splitting up his Shooter Boys. Certainly there is a lot of tendency for players in this game to, since it's just easier on their micro, they will often just keep their two range squads together, whether it's double Shooter Boys, double Guardsmen, double Chaos Space Marines. They'll often just bunch them up a lot together, and that makes them very vulnerable to being disrupted or getting hit with area of effect attacks. And Shooter Boys, since their models are very, very weak, they are very, very vulnerable to area of effect attacks. In particular, we do have the Catachan Devils. One Old Reliable will actually be doing pretty decent damage to the Shooter Boys, and then they'll also be getting focus fired by the Guardsmen and the Sentinel. So that will be a follow-up that will effectively, if Krakza bunches up his double Shooter Boys and they get hit by an Old Reliable and then focus fired, that will probably mean that they will need to retreat, or Krakza will just bleed too much from the losses. Some nice play with the Death Gun on the Mekboy. The Mekboy has been upgraded to the Death Gun. He is the only hero who can upgrade to a suppression weapon. He's the only hero who can be a setup team or a setup hero. It's not a great suppression weapon, but again, it's still a suppression weapon that you can get on a hero, and then you don't actually have to buy a Luda squad. And I think he's really the only hero who can even have that option, even if even if his form of it is not even that great. He just has that option that no other hero has. And you also get the versatility of, if you decide you don't want that, you can switch it out. And that's all relatively cheap, since it's generally cheaper to get a war gear than it is to get an entirely new unit. And then you also don't have the deal with the population. And again, you just have that flexibility of, you can change the weapon, and you can use that population to get an entirely different unit for your needs, such as this Pain Boy right here, who is very nice. Now, the Pain Boy is a single entity, and one of the reasons that's good is that he is an upfront purchase. That means you purchase him upfront, and he does not bleed. You do pay for upgrades if you want to get those upgrades, but as long as you keep him alive, he doesn't cost anything. He doesn't bleed you. So that's one of the nice things about getting a Pain Boy in Tier 1. You get another unit that is not going to bleed you. And orcs bleed horribly. I think they bleed worse than most races in this game, possibly the worst. And the Pain Boy helps you to resist that bleed in a lot of ways. There's the fact that he himself does not bleed, and then since he is a healing unit, he can heal the units like Slugger Boys, so that they win engagement, so that they don't lose as many models. And he is himself, that Pain Boy, just good for tying up. I believe it's 40 DPS power melee. Some people even said it was 50. But either way, you've got some decent power melee damage coming out. And that just gives you another unit to tie up. And that's especially nice to have when you're playing a unit like the Mekboy, who is not really... Oh, and not... Wow, the Slugger Boys combined with that Pain Boy actually wipe out a Guardsman squad. Again, that's really nice to have because... especially for when you're playing an orc hero who is not the war boss and is not really a melee tie-up himself. It can be particularly good, actually, against like power armor races, since you'll actually be doing, if it's 40 DPS power melee, that's actually going to be better damage than the war boss right out of the gate. But we're not talking about the war boss right here. We've got the Mekboy, who combined with the Shooter Boys has fully destroyed the generator farm for Stoned Elf Boy. Stoned Elf Boy is already in Tier 2. He already has some power that he can use to make some kind of Tier 2 purchase. He's already got the Stormtroopers, which actually cost no power, and that will give him a lot of anti-infantry firepower, and a decent replacement for the Guardsman squad that he lost, although it really would have been better if he had kept that Guardsman squad. Weird Boy also now out for Krakza. Krakza, I don't know what to say about the Weird Boy, but the Commissar almost goes down. I think got a little lucky there. Line of sight may have been blocked a bit, or he just got out of there just fine. But these Stormtroopers, pretty good replacement for the Guardsmen. They will bleed a little bit harder, but one of the really nice things about them is that they have that Assault Kit. With the Assault Kit, that increases their damage. They do pretty good range damage. It's actually 15 DPS per model, which comes out to 75 as a squad. That is quite a bit better than certainly better than a 6-man Guardsman squad, and still quite a bit better than a 9-man Guardsman squad. And I think it may even be better than a fully upgraded Guardsman squad with a Sergeant and a Commissar. So you get a lot more firepower out of these Stormtroopers. They actually cost no power to field. And the Assault Kit itself doesn't cost any power. So you get a very... There's definitely some degree of cost effectiveness to these Stormtroopers, and that might be why Stoned Elf Boy is getting another one after he's had his power farm bashed, because he can put more Stormtroopers on the field. And then the versatility of those Stormtroopers come with their 2 different upgrades. You have one that is a heavily focused anti-infantry upgrade, that Assault Kit, and then you of course get the anti-armor kit, which is often considered one of the best anti-vehicle units in the game, since it can infiltrate, it has a melt-a-bomb, and then all of the, I don't remember whether it's either 4 of the weapons are meltas or 5 of them are. I know it's in, the difference is between retail and elite, and I don't actually remember which is which. I believe it's actually all 5 weapons are meltas in the elite mod. But these stormtroopers good for a lot of purposes. Good for flanking because they can infiltrate. Good for keeping them in cover at long range, and you can actually sight for them using a different unit, such as, say, the Commissar, the Sentinel, or the Guardsman. And they will do a lot of damage to the shooter boys before the shooter boys can even get in range of the stormtroopers. So we have some point-blank teleporting with the Mekboy. Again, that's one of the other benefits of having that Mekboy with that Death Gun, since he also has the teleport. I believe he's also the only teleporting suppression weapon in the game. And you can teleport right in front of a unit. And of course, suppression weapons always do more damage the closer you get to them. I think the weird boy has to be very careful right here. He has a Commissar right here who has the Power Fist, as well as Stubbornness, and is getting the Flak Jacket. The Commissar, this is a strange subject, since there's a lot of talk about the Power Fist versus the Fist of Brachus. And this is going to be a controversial opinion, and it's going to sound very strange. But I personally think the Power Fist is the Commissar's best weapon. And that's something that I think is hard for people to understand, considering the Fist of Brachus is exactly the same thing, except it has a really, really good ability attached to it as well. Now, I mean, first of all, the Power Fist compared to the Power Sword. With the Power Sword, you do get the lead by example ability, which is very nice, but is a power melee weapon versus a heavy melee weapon. So it really just doesn't have the versatility of the Power Fist. And then even if you compare the damage that the Power Fist does against heavy armor compared to the Power Sword, the Power Fist actually does more damage because the base DPS... I mean, the Power Fist does... Yeah, I think I said the Power Fist. The Power Fist does more damage to heavy armor than the Power Sword because its base DPS is just so much higher. 84.62 versus... versus 50. Now, what I personally think makes it better than the Fist of Brachus is purely the convenience of being able to get it in Tier 2. And some people might think that's irrelevant, but I think it's extremely relevant. Why are these stormtroopers not retreating? Since Tier 3 can be a long way away. That can be 5, 10, 15 minutes later after getting to Tier 2. And in some cases, you may never even be able to get to it. So you can get that Power Fist very early, and it can be killing vehicles, killing infantry models, bleeding infantry models hard, and killing heroes, just making your Commissar a lot more effective at the start of Tier 2 as opposed to waiting all the way to Tier 3. And I'm actually the suppression use of Krakza's Mekboy is actually really beautiful. So he actually has a very Mekboy-centered play, and I feel like the Mekboy is often used very much as a support role. They'll often use him with his healing. They'll use the, I believe it's the Super Tough Beam in combination with Knobs in Tier 3. They'll use, what is that? The Battery Pack in combination with Knobs in Tier 3. But I like that Krakza is really using the Mekboy. He has the custom force field to make the Mekboy tougher. And he's really using that suppression weapon to harass, be annoying. In a way, it's kind of not that effective, but it's still very interesting. It's different. It's fresh. So the Pain Boy right here, he has been upgraded to the Stronga Git Sauce. Gives him more health, also gives him faster energy regeneration, and it also makes his healing a bit better. While the entire unfortunately now Krakza is kind of bunching up his shooter boys, and he's paying for it a bit. He got both of them disrupted. He's paying for it hard. He got disrupted by the artillery spotter squad. He got them blinded by the artillery spotter squad, and then they also ate a grenade from the stormtrooper. So Krakza lost that engagement pretty handily. Krakza also has had, I think, pretty good unit preservation. Stoned Oathboy himself has not lost any units since losing that guardsman squad in the beginning. And to some extent, it's interesting that he lost the guardsman squad. He pretty much replaced it with these stormtroopers, which are going to be putting out a much better firepower. Although it also means that Stone Elfboy does not really have much in terms of repair support if he wanted to get a vehicle, since he would mainly only have the one guardsman squad for repair. He could, of course, get a repair bunker, which is just one of the perks of getting, just one of the perks of playing Imperial Guard, that they have this area of effect vehicle repair that can make it not absolutely necessary to get their base repair unit, which is the guardsmen. Although guardsmen are actually very convenient to have, and in some ways more so than many other repair units, since they actually fully upgraded. They do have decent firepower, and they're especially used. They're actually a little bit more versatile than the stormtroopers, since they can get plasma guns. Although the stormtroopers, for just taking out regular infantry armor, is quite a bit better, or are quite a bit better than the guardsmen. So Krakza's already in tier 3. He has gotten the flash gits that will help him to, I think, compete with the range firepower of these stormtroopers. Now those flash gits are already upgrading. He's prioritizing getting the git finders, and that allows the flash gits to shoot even farther. I don't know the exact range of the flash gits. I don't know exactly. Really good for finding some gits. Use Kandaka from farther away. But I don't know the exact range. But either way, it's a range increase, and those flash gits do have just better than average range. Basically just a way to help Krakza compete with the massive range DPS that that Stone Elfboy is putting out. And we're actually having quite an engagement right here. Everything is coming down. Now Stone Elfboy put down a flare, but I mean Krakza's just charging with his shooter boys. He's just charging with everything. And to be fair, his shooter boys would actually win in melee against the guardsmen. He's losing a shooter boy squad right there, but he does also have this flash git squad now with the blastas. That's something that is probably going to majorly destroy the guardsmen. I don't think the sentinel will make it out alive, and no, it does not. Commissar does have to be a little careful right here. That, I think, is a terrible idea. He did a point-blank Inspire Terror to instantly kill one of the models, but I mean, there were 5 models there. He got one of them, but lost a Commissar for it, which is not worth it. Unfortunately, the Commissar does have a very long wind-up animation to that Inspire Terror, and during that whole time, he was completely vulnerable. And it may have only been like 2 or 3 seconds, but Slugger Boys are doing over 200 DPS, over 200 damage per second. So not a good play by Stone Elfboy. I think he really should have just put up his energy shield. That would have... I don't know if that would have allowed him to win against the Slugger Boys and the Pain Boy, but it certainly would have allowed him to at least stall out while he got this support from his guardsmen and the stormtroopers and the artillery spotter. He could have even put an artillery shell on his Commissar while his Commissar was using that energy shield, and the Commissar wouldn't have even been knocked down by the shell. I believe it does friendly fire. So Stone Elfboy has had mostly an infantry-centric play. He is getting a Lehman Russ out, so very impressive that he's getting a Lehman Russ out, but he has been slightly behind in tech. Krakza got to tier 3 first. He already put out a tier 3 unit, while Stone Elfboy has not, and he still has quite a bit of resources that he could put out another tier 3 unit. I think he could already put out another Flash Git Squad, but he might actually be prioritizing... I was going to say he's prioritizing getting a Knob, but he's actually getting big shooters on his shooter boys in tier 3. So that's very, very interesting. I've never seen that before. Waiting till tier 3 to get the shooter boys. He made it with these shooter boys with no big shooters until tier 3.
Shooters ready for you, boss.
And of course, Krakza, I think he has not really been using red, which means that he's well in enough in the range that he can do a rocks. Now, it's interesting that he hasn't been using red, and let's think about the reasons why he hasn't been using that red. First of all, he hasn't had the big shooters, so he hasn't been using aiming what's dat. The Pain Boy is actually one of the few orc units with energy, so he actually uses energy to cast his spells. The Weird Boy, as well, uses his own energy to cast his spells. I don't think, to the best of my ability, I don't think the Flash Gits even have any abilities. And here we go with that rocks. Oh my god, I think 2 squads just got instantly wiped there. Yeah, 2 squads got instantly wiped. Catachan Devils not doing well at all. Catachan Devils going to get out of there with 3 models left, and Catachan Devils are a pain to reinforce because they cost power to reinforce. They cost something like, even the requisition cost is something like 29, which for how much health the Catachan models have, that's quite a bit. Although that being said, and there goes an Inspire Terror, somewhat late. Not quite enough to take out that weird boy, but I think the reason why he got that flak jacket was to deal with those sub-commanders that Krakza has. Lehman Russ is getting a Executioner Cannon, but he needs to be very careful with this weird boy, who now, the Mekboy has now equipped all 3 of his weapons. He's had the regular Def Gun, now he has the beamy Def Gun, and he also had, for very briefly, he had the Daka Big Shooter. The Mekboy is standing on some landmines, and they finally go off. Mekboy can get some landmines himself, but he hasn't elected to get that. And he has switched out, no, just kidding. For a little while it seemed he had the super tough beam, but he switched back to the custom force field. And I think he's actually going to lose his Mekboy in retreat. So one of the use of these Commissar mines from Stoned Elfboy is that they can be detonated on retreat. And if you have a unit that is running through those mines at relatively low health on retreat, you can pretty much say goodbye to that unit. And that's what happened to the Mekboy right there. I've seen Stoned Elfboy do it, and it's something that's definitely... You're going to see that a lot from people who play the Commissar a lot, and not so much from people who don't. Since it's a global that potentially has a very good payoff, but it's extremely situational, you really need to see the good opportunities for it. And it's also something that doesn't have much in terms of immediate gratification or immediate effect. It definitely doesn't have the versatility of that Basilisk Flare, and it doesn't have the major payoff, the major potential payoff of a Rocket Run. But Stoned Elfboy is a dedicated Commissar player. He has put those mines to a great effect many, many times. We have a major Orc flank coming around. Commissar, I think, is in a little bit of trouble and needs to get out of there, but he will go down. Not a chance. We still have... The Weird Boy is going to go down as well. Krakza not paying attention to his Weird Boy because he's paying attention to his flank. To be fair, his flank is probably going pretty well. He is definitely winning this engagement, although I don't think he will wipe any squads. We now have some Kashkins out. The Kashkins, extremely powerful in range. Again, we have some competing range DPS, although I think the Flash Gits with their Blastus might still be beating the Kashkins. At least the Kashkins right now still seem to be in their vanilla form. So, and with these... Oh. It was actually a concede from Stoned Elfboy. Just conceded instantly. Well, I think he pretty much conceded because Krakza was about to get a triple cap. And at that point, with these knobs pushing Stoned Elfboy into his base, he knew that there just wasn't going to be enough time to get back out on the base, get back out on the field, and decap at least 2 of the VPs. So some interesting play from Krakza. I liked it. Hope you enjoyed the cast as well. Have a good night.